A homeless lady stood quiet and handcuffed in a packed courtroom, charged of stealing a jacket to stay warm. She was referred to as a vagabond by the prosecutor. The judge hardly raised his head. Nobody in that room was aware of her true identity. However, everything ceased as the clerk read her entire name out loud. The judge became pale. The whole courtroom held its breath as he rose from the bench, something judges seldom ever do. What transpired next altered everything. Where in the globe are you seeing this video right now? What this lady had given up, and what the system had taken from her, was going to be disclosed in the most impactful way possible. So if you care about tales like this, think about subscribing. The holding cell had an odor of old concrete and chlorine. Renhald sat with her hands loosely on her shins, knees pulled up and her back against the chilly wall. Every few seconds, the fluorescent light overhead flickered, creating uneven shadows over the little area. It had been 3 days since she arrived. 3 days of stillness and the same old routine. A younger lady with bleached hair and smeared makeup had been attempting to strike up a conversation since yesterday afternoon in the cell adjacent to hers. She wanted to know Ren's hometown. She inquired as to Ren's prior arrest history. "Is Ren afraid?" she inquired. Ren didn't respond. She simply sat and breathed deeply. Her gaze remained focused on a place in the middle distance. After a while, the woman quit trying and muttered something about people believing they were too wonderful to speak. Around her face, Ren's hair hung in black coils. Her clothing was ripped in spots and covered in mud and what seemed to be motor oil. Her knuckles were bruised and her hands were calloused. Faint scars ran in exact parallel lines over her left forearm, barely visible under the filth. They had an aged appearance. They appear purposeful. Shortly after 7 in the morning, Deputy Rustin showed up at the bars. In his 40s, he was a large man with receding hair and a frown that never went away. He had an apple that had seen better days, a wrapped sandwich, and a carton of milk on a plastic tray. Without a ceremony, he pushed the tray through the slot at the bottom of the cell door after unlocking it. It stopped a few inches from Ren's feet after skidding on the concrete. His words. "Eat up, sweetheart. Judge Oakage dislikes waiting. In an hour you will be awake." Ren grabbed the tray and drew it nearer. She opened the sandwich, took a quick look at it, and then took slow, deliberate chews. Before swallowing, she chewed precisely 15 times. She didn't touch the fruit, but she drank half the milk. She finished, put the tray down, and shut her eyes. Silent words formed as her lips moved, hardly noticeable. In a steady pattern, her fingers tapped against her thigh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Deputy Rustin frowned as he observed her for a while. Then, with his boots resonating down the hallway, he shook his head and left. Constructed in the 1970s, the courtroom was compact and hasn't seen many updates since. The walls were covered in wood paneling. The gallery seats were smooth from decades of usage. There was a subtle scent of old paper and floor polish. The docket was light for a Thursday morning. There were a few folks seated on the benches, retirees trying to find something to do, a couple of college students completing a civic observation assignment. On a laptop, a local reporter is silently typing. Sitting on the bench, Judge Emmet Oakage went over a pile of documents. His gray hair was cut short, and he had a lined face at 63. He had spent 20 years on the bench. He was seen as a fair but worn-out judge who had witnessed too many cases merge into a lengthy procession of human failings. He nodded to the bailiff after taking a quick look at the wall clock. He commanded, "Bring in the next defendant." Deputies Rustin rushed into the courtroom as the side door opened. The chains clinking quietly with every stride, she was bound at the ankles and wrists. The sleeves of her orange jumpsuit, which was 2 sizes too big, hung beyond her hands. The majority of her features were obscured by her hair, which continued to fall across her face. She shuffled to the defensive table, her gaze fixed on the ground. They whispered in the gallery. Leaning over, a woman in the second row whispered something to the man next to her. After taking out their phone, someone else decided to put it away. Ren was placed in front of the table by Deputy Rustin, who then took a step back and crossed his arms. Nash Delcourt, a mid-20s public defender who appeared to have slept off in his suit, was seated at the defense table. His hair was sticking up in the back, and his tie was crooked. He held a coffee-stained legal pad in his palm and a pile of folders under one arm. He looked from Wren to the judge and back again. The day before, he had only met his customer once, and she had not spoken to him at all. Felicia Garnett, the prosecutor, was waiting across the aisle. Sharp-featured and dressed in a well-tailored blue suit, she was in her early 40s. She had her hair pulled back into a tight ponytail. This was one of the hundreds of cases she had prosecuted. Low-level offenses, repeat offenders, and those who repeatedly went through the system. She opened her file, hardly looking at Wren. Judge Oakage raised his head from his desk. He cleared his throat and adjusted his reading glasses, saying, "Case number 4721. Nash stood and fumbled with his legal paper, saying, "The State versus Wren Hall. Charges are trespassing, petty theft, and resisting a lawful order. Counselor, is your client ready to proceed?" The judge looked at Wren and said, "Yes, Your Honor, we're ready." "You are entitled to legal representation, Miss Halstead. You will be represented by Mr. Delcourt. You get it?" Wren remained silent. With her hands clasped in front of her and her head lowered, she stood still. The chains dangled like a cord between her wrists. Oakage, the judge, scowled. "Miss." Hall paused before saying, "I need you to acknowledge that you understand." Leaning forward, Nash quickly whispered something to Wren. He begged in a hushed voice. She shook her head just a little bit. Nash cleared his throat and straightened once more. "Since intake, my client has not responded, Your Honor. I've made several attempts to speak with her, but she hasn't responded." With a groan, the judge put down his pen. "You must take part in your own defense, Miss Hallod. Everyone involved will find this procedure much more challenging if you refuse to comply. Nothing has changed." Wren breathed steadily and slowly. Her stance remained unchanged. Someone mumbled loudly enough to be heard in the gallery, most likely on something. A softer voice. "Do they never want assistance?" After giving the spectators a stern look, Judge Oakage went back to the prosecutor. "Please make the state's case, Miss Garnett." With her heels tapping on the tile floor, Felicia Garnett took a step forward. She had a remote control in one hand and a thin folder in the other. Behind the bench of the judge, a screen dropped from the ceiling. "Your Honor, the facts of this case are straightforward," she said. Security officers at Riverside Plaza found the defendant dozing off in the parking garage on the evening of November 19. She had used boxes and plastic sheets to form a temporary shelter in one of the stairwells. She refused to leave when security approached her. A fuzzy security camera image appeared on the screen. It depicted a person curled up in a concrete stairway corner, surrounded by bundles of cloth and luggage. 22:47 was the timestamp in the corner. Garnett went on. After looking into it more, security discovered that the defendant had stolen a jacket from an open car on the building's 3rd floor. After being found, the jacket was given back to its owner. The defendant was taken into custody without any problems. The following picture showed up. A close-up of Wren sitting on the floor with her face buried and her arms encircling her knees. A few steps away, a security guy was talking into a radio. According to Garnett, the defendant lacks identification, no fixed address, and no 4-year job history that can be verified. She had been arrested twice in the last 6 months for similar charges, including trespassing and loitering. By all standards, she is a vagabond who declines to use the social services that are offered. Nash got to his feet a little too soon. "If it's okay with you, my client has had a lot of housing instability. No one is in risk from her. This particular jacket was stolen for warmth, not for financial gain. This is not a criminal operation. It is a matter of survival." With a weak smile, Garnett turned to face him. "There are shelters, counselor. Programs exist. Your client has made the decision not to use them. Instability is not that. The community will be burdened by that decision." The gallery echoed with a murmur of agreement. Judge Oakage gestured for quiet. "Let's limit the editorial criticism, Miss Garnett. Remain true to the facts. Your Honor, of course." Garnett faced the screen once more. "The state suggests a suspended sentence and a mental health examination, provided the offender seeks the necessary assistance. We think this is essential and fair." Judge Oakage gave Nash a glance. Does your client want to enter a plea, counselor? Nash gave Wren a quick look. She was still standing. After pausing, he spoke. Given my client's current situation, Your Honor, I would want to request a continuance from the court so that I may confer with her and decide on the best course of action. This was taken into consideration by the judge. With a steady, methodical pattern, he tapped his fingers on the bench. Then he gave Wren a straight glance. This is your turn to talk, Miss Halstead. If you have anything to say, anything at all, this is the moment. Wren raised her head slightly for the first time since coming into the courtroom. The angle of her jaw changed, but her eyes stayed downcast. Her face changed in some way. Something deeper, not fear nor defiance. Perhaps exhaustion or resignation. Judge Oakage bent over. He looked at her for a long time. Something about her stance made him hesitate. The way she carried herself, even in a jumpsuit that was 3 sizes too big and in chains. It wasn't a broken person's posture. It was the position of someone who has chosen to remain silent. Miss Hall staled, he said, this time with more tact. If you won't assist yourself, I can't help you. Wren's eyes briefly brightened. The judge's eyes met theirs. They were sharp, hollow, and black, extremely sharp, like the gaze of a person who witnessed everything yet remained silent. Then she averted her gaze once more. The instant was over. Judge Oakage reclined. He looked at Nash, then at the prosecutor. Let's make sure that everything is on file before I render a decision. For the record, Mrs. Fentress, could you kindly verify the defendant's complete legal name? Mrs. Yale Fentress had been quietly going over the intake papers at the clerk's desk. In her 50s, she was a fastidious lady who was renowned for seeing mistakes that others failed to notice. She obsessively kept her desk neat and wore reading glasses on a chain. She had spent 30 years working as a court clerk. She took great satisfaction in paying attention to the details. She scanned the intake paperwork after picking it up. Then she stopped, squinting behind her glasses. This time she read the form more slowly. Her paper-holding hand started to shake a little. The judge asked for the complete name, Mrs. Fentress. She didn't answer right away. After putting the paper down, she took it back up. She read quietly, her lips moving. Her face became white. Fentress, Mrs. Judge Oakage's voice grew stern. Is anything wrong? Startled, she glanced up. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I recently discovered that the official record does not have the entire legal name. The judge scowled. Her identity has been verified. She is listed as Wren Hall on the intake form. Yes, but the complete name, Your Honor, the whole name, it has to be properly entered. Angrily, Judge Oakage waved a hand. Excellent. Proceed. Fentress, Mrs. got up. She used both hands to lift the paper. There was silence in the courtroom. The reporter in the rear had even ceased typing. People paid heed to the tremble in Mrs. Fentress's voice. She cleared her throat. Wren Ashbridge Hall Stodd is the full legal name of the defendant. Whiskey 4, service number November 73. Just one hotel. The courtroom went silent. The pen that Judge Oakage had been holding over his notebook froze in the middle of its stroke. He glanced up abruptly. Number of services. Her voice was now no more than a whisper, Mrs. Fentress's. Military title, SEAL the 6th Team. Like smoke, the words lingered in the air. Nobody moved for a second. Nobody said anything. In the quiet, the wall clock ticked away loudly. Judge Oakage gazed at Mrs. Fentress. He then turned to face Wren. He was pallid now. He gingerly put down his pen as though he was worried it may shatter. Do that again, he said. Mrs. Fentress took a deep breath. Haled Wren Ashbridge, SEAL the 6th Team. She was recorded as killed in action, according to the documentation. March of 2021. It exploded in the gallery. Shocked murmurs replaced the whispers. There was a gasp. Leaning against the wall, Deputy Rustin suddenly straightened. Nash's mouth dropped wide as he looked at Wren. Garnett's face was losing its color as she stood still. This must be a mistake, Your Honor. No way. A trembling hand was raised by Judge Oakage. Quiet. Quiet down, everyone. The courtroom immediately obeyed. The magistrate got up. It was a steady, methodical motion. During sessions, judges seldom ever stood. It was an indication that something significant had just happened, a violation of procedure. He seemed to stabilize himself by holding onto the edge of the bench. He gazed at Wren. Her eyes were closed. A solitary tear trickled down her cheek, forming a distinct streak across the grime on her face. She did not remove it with a wipe. As though a burden she had been bearing for years had now grown too heavy, her shoulders drooped just a little. The tone of Judge Oakage's voice had changed. There was confusion in the galleries. "I told you to clear the room, Your Honor. This isn't a request." Deputy Rustin stepped in right away and ushered people to the doors. The reporter made an attempt to object. After a few minutes, the gallery was deserted, but the college students were still looking about in confusion. The judge, Mrs. Fentress, Garnett, Nash, Wren, and Deputy Rustin were the only people left. The quiet felt oppressive. Judge Oakage resigned from his position. It was unheard of. His hands were evident as he approached Wren slowly and deliberately. 3 feet from her, he came to a standstill. "Lieutenant Commander Hall," he murmured. Wren's eyes opened. When she did speak, it was rough and hoarse from lack of usage. No more. The judge gasped with surprise. He had tears in his eyes. He moved closer. "Fallujah," he said. "Sandlass Operation, November 2019. Wren's gaze suddenly met his. She was completely there for the first time. She still had fatigue on her face, but there was more going on underneath it. Acknowledgement. Incredulity. The voice of Judge Oakage shattered. "I served with the 5th Marines, 2nd Battalion, as Marine Captain Empt Oakage." Wren gazed at him. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The judge went on. "We were trapped. We are 16. According to intel, extraction was not feasible. They instructed us to wait for air help while holding our position. That was never going to happen. We believed ourselves to be dead." He used the back of his palm to wipe his eyes. "Then you arrived, you and your group, in the midst of a battle. 20-1 outnumbered." Wren's face twisted a little. She turned her head away. The judge responded, "You carried my sergeant on your back." "Under hostile fire, 2M. Your shoulder was hit by shrapnel. Refused to take medevac until everyone had left." Wren's voice could hardly be heard. "Pewitt, Sergeant. Emma was his daughter. She was 3 years old." Judge Oakage broke down in tears. "Thanks to you, she is now 14 years old, plays soccer, and aspires to become a veterinarian." The judge's breathing was the only sound in the room. At last, Nash discovered his voice. "I don't understand, Your Honor. How does she become homeless if she is a decorated SEAL? How does one go from that to this?" Judge Oakage faced him, his face stern. "Since we let her down. Everybody." He turned to face Wren again. "Could you tell us what occurred, ma'am?" Wren was silent for a while. Her voice was flat and steady when she finally spoke, as if she were reading from a mission report. "Black Ops in Syria. March of 2021. A valuable item was being extracted by my team. We were compromised. The enemy was aware of our approach. She stopped and inhaled. The team left. To set charges, I stayed behind before the helicopter arrives." "What took place?" The judge inquired softly. "The detonator broke down. The blast went off early. The next memory I have is of waking up in a field hospital. No equipment, no identification, no documentation. I was hauled in by local troops. Nobody recognized me. Mrs. Fentress was on her computer, typing furiously. I'm retrieving DoD records, Your Honor. She is listed as killed in action, or KIA, officially." Wren gave a nod. It made sense. The mission was classified. It's cleaner that way. "However, you made it through," Nash said. "It took me 4 months to return to the United States, outlets for refugees and medical shipments. I identified myself to the VA when I eventually arrived. What were they saying?" Even though he already knew the answer, Judge Oakage inquired. Wren grinned sourly. "They said that I was trying to take valor by lying. The space became motionless." "My face had changed," Wren said. "Reconstructive surgery and burns. I no longer resembled my military photo. Even I was told by the Navy that my papers were classified, unable to affirm or deny." She gazed down at her hands in chains. "For 6 months I tried. Every department, every office. Nobody took me seriously." Garnett's voice trembled as he spoke after standing still. "The charges, Your Honor, assuming this is accurate." She was interrupted by Judge Oakage. "The accusations are pointless." He gave Deputy Rustin a glance. "Take off her cuffs right away." With quivering hands, Rustin unfastened the shackles and stepped forward. There was a metallic clang when they hit the ground. Wren stared at the red lines left on her wrists as she carefully stroked them. Judge Oakage inhaled deeply. "We're getting together again." The entire courtroom. Nash began to talk. "Perhaps we should do this softly, Your Honor." The judge spoke in a stern tone. "No, this took place in public. In public, it is repaired." He looked across at Wren. "I'm going to make another request for your trust, ma'am." Wren gave him a tired expression. "Why? I owe you my life because you trusted me in Fallujah." The courtroom's doors opened. Confusion and conjecture filled the gallery as they poured back in. Word had gotten out. There were more people there. Outside, local news teams could be seen with their cameras rolling. Deputy Rustin barely managed to keep them away. Wren was still wearing the big orange jumpsuit as he stood at the defense table, unchained. Standing next to her, still taking it all in, was Nash. Silent and pallid, Garnett sat at the prosecution table. Judge Oakage went back to the bench. Sharply and deliberately, he lifted his gavel and brought it down 3 times. "The court has reconvened. I want to make a statement before we move on." Immediately, the room became quiet. "There has been a serious injustice inside these walls. Lieutenant Commander Wren Ashbridge Halstead of the U.S. Navy SEALs is the woman in front of you." There were gasps. A person in the rear row got to their feet, a gay-haired veteran with big eyes. The judge went on to say that she is a decorated battle veteran. 3 Purple Hearts, a bronze star with courage, and a silver star. In ways that most of us cannot fathom, she has honorably served this nation. The muttering became more audible. People were frantically chatting, texting, and taking out their phones. The judge's voice cracked as he stated, "She was brought into this courtroom in chains. For taking a jacket in order to keep warm, we didn't give a damn about her. We were mistaken." He gave Wren a straight glance. "I was mistaken." Garnett got up and spoke tremblingly. "The state wishes to dismiss all allegations with prejudice, Your Honor." She looked over at Wren. "I'm at a loss for words, ma'am. I'm so sorry." Wren spoke quietly. "That's not good enough," Garnett exclaimed, tears running down her cheeks. "You were doing your job." Judge Oakage took off his robe. Carefully folding it, he placed it on the bench. He then down the stairs. Everyone in the courtroom held their breath. He walked over to Wren, halted 3 feet away, stood up straight, shoulders back, and then lifted his hand in a formal military salute. There was complete quiet. Wren gazed at him. She then gently gave the salute back. Her form was flawless, yet her fingers trembled. Deputy Rustin became alert. Saluted. The veteran with the queer hair in the rear stood and gave a salute. Then someone else got up. Then one more. In a matter of seconds, half of the courtroom was on their feet, saluting or placing their hands over their hearts. Wren started crying uncontrollably. Her salutation had not been dropped. Someone saw her for the first time in years. I actually saw her. Please leave the name of the person who served in silence, who gave all and asked for nothing, in the comments section of this story. Together, let's honor them. Please think about subscribing if you think stories like these should be told. These are important times. At that time, the courtroom remained still. Back straight, hands up.